Good afternoon, Maria.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, everybody. We're so excited to be back with you. And my guest is Maria Mastrodicasa, and author of the upcoming book, You'll Never. And I'm so excited because it's only just a couple of days, a few days before your book is released on Thursday. And you chose Human Rights Day to release your book, which is so apropos to the topic of the book and to everything that you have gone through in your life, Maria. I'm so excited to be spending this time with you today and with our guests because I know that we're going to have some people. Oh, we already have some people, yes. And today being Memorial Day,
Yeah.
um, remembering our folks that were in the military serving and that passed away serving our country. Gabrielle, thank you. Gabrielle is saying Happy Memorial Day.
Yes, such an important day. Such an important day for us to just be able to sit and relax and go to a barbecue. And that doesn't happen in other countries. We have an amazing, amazing military, as do other countries. And, it's very important to recognize them and think about their families who are
Yes,
left behind and the
indeed,
children.
indeed, absolutely. Well, we're here to talk about your book and the life that you have led and your bigger purpose that you have. And I just want to give a recap real quick. You'll never, how many times have we been told, you'll never amount to anything, you will never reach a certain plateau, or you'll never get to here, or you'll never get to be like fill in the blanks in all of this. And so I love the name of the book. Hi, John. We have John Mainero with us as well. And so this book is really meant, in my mind, when I read your manuscript, and I just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to read your book and to be such a small part of it. When I picked up your book and I couldn't put it down. And as I was reading your stories, the different stories and the way you wrote it was wonderful, because you have lessons for every chapter, and it's an easy book for people to actually make it a study book. And as I read it, I was thinking how many lessons, and how wonderful for men to get an insight of how women think. We don't have very many books for men to get an insight of what women are thinking, what they're going through in their mind. And then for women also to learn how to self-advocate. And that whole idea of we don't do this alone is so present throughout the book, Maria. Last time we spoke, last weekend, there were many lessons, and if you want to, please go back to last Sunday where we talked about some of the stories in your book. And I wanted to start today with what happened that night at the restaurant. If you can take us back to the restaurant and what happened that night.
Yes, so I was asked or told to go to the restaurant with, a group of people from my department, and the boss of the department had requested. So I thought, sure, I will go. And then after dinner, they said, no, we're just going to go for an after dinner drink. And we were in Manhattan. That was where our office was. So I thought, oh, well, okay, I really wanted to go home, but okay. And so we're driving. And we end up in the state of New Jersey at this bar after dinner. Drinks we're having, and I did not have a drink, and they're all there at this bar, and it's dark, and they're just sitting around talking, and the boss just keeps touching my leg, my thigh, my knee, and I feel very shame, uncomfortable, it's just not, it was just such a really bad feeling. At the time, I didn't know how to describe it. And again, I was 20. I had already been to this man's home. I knew his wife, his children, and supposedly he had a girlfriend in our company. So,
let me stop you for a moment, because we're talking about something that's very delicate, and and you're 20 years old, and I'm trying to think, my daughter is going to turn 25 years old this week, and I remember when she was 20. I remember when I was 20, and I didn't know any better, and I didn't have the social graces to get out of a situation or to say, what are you doing?
right.
Or stop it, or anything, or to articulate anything. It's like, so as a woman so young in your 20s, and something like that in a time like this today, maybe people would not do that, or maybe they still do. And what's a girl to do? So when you say you felt shame, that's very interesting to me, because that happens where the person that's being invaded is the one that's feeling shame. Tell me about that.
Yes, I think it was uncomfortable, and I felt some shame. I mean, here it is. I know his family. I'm not doing anything. I remember what I was wearing. I was tired. It's a long day. It's very intense on the trading floor of the government market in the bond department. It's a long day. I had no plans to go. This wasn't, like I would be ready. So I was tired, and I thought, oh, and many things were going through my mind. And I didn't, like you said, at that time, I wasn't really equipped to understand, like, really what to say. Like, don't do this, or stop, or, and all these other people are there. So I'm trying not to make it a big deal. And I just keep lifting the hand off and going, ha, 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 ha. Like, just trying to make light of it, as opposed to if it happened today,
Yes. Yes.
I was 20. And then I'm thinking, it was late. And yeah, I was not thinking clearly. And yet I still knew that this was not an advance that I brought on, that I wanted. I didn't even want to be there. And I knew it was inappropriate. And yet I never thought what the next day would bring. So I just kept pushing him away.
Let me ask you this, because there are going to be people that are watching this that are in their 20s, that something like this is going to ring to them.
Yes.
What if this were to happen again to you? And we're going to get to the very next day. We have 25 minutes left, and I want to leave some time for if anybody has any questions that they can ask them. But if this were to happen again today, what would you do? Because I know in your mind you've gone through this a million times. So what would you do?
And after this, many things had happened similar, and I knew then how to handle it. Because once this happens and it doesn't sit well with you, and you look back, you go, I shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yes.
And I maybe could have handled it better, or spoke words of advocacy. So I didn't feel like I advocated for myself in that evening there. I did push him away, but I could have spoken words like, this doesn't feel right. This is uncomfortable. Is this appropriate? I could have said something like that. Again, 20 years old, in an arena that, was not that familiar to me.
Or even just, please stop.
Yes.
I'm not comfortable.
Yes.
Or if you don't stop, I'm going to have to move to another chair, or something like that. And it's interesting because we as women tend to be the caretakers. And so you were, in essence, taking care of him in the presence of others too, because there were other people at the table as well. And so you were worried about probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're taking care of his persona by not making a scene.
Not making a scene. And also, when you grow up a certain way, don't embarrass your family, so I didn't want to make a scene. And yet it's funny that you say, when I was saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. So what I taught my daughter and what I make sure of all the time is that you always have cash on you, hidden in different places, so that you can leave and take a cab if you need to have cash. If they don't take a credit card, which most do now, and always have a credit card. So that anytime you could say, as a woman, you can always say, excuse me, I have to go to the ladies' room. And you could just leave the establishment without another word to protect yourself, because you always get to, and no one stops you from going to the ladies' room.
Oh, nobody does.
It's wonderful.
I like that. No one stops you from going to the ladies' room. I like that. Let's talk about the next day fairly quickly so that we can move on to the next story, because there's something else that I'd like to get to. So now this happens and you're pushing the hand away, you push it, and you do that throughout the night. And then you finally get home and you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And you're thinking, oh, not a big deal. I'll just get to the office the next day. And what happened?
Yeah, and we did cover it last week. One of the men that were around that table with us saw me in the morning and said, oh, good morning, Maria, can you come over? And so we go to the back of the department and he says, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave. Leave? He said, yeah, you're not going to be able to work here anymore. You need to go quietly. And then, I was confused. I didn't know what to say. And then something in me realized that I get to go to the president of the company, the owner, and he hired me. And so I spoke to him and I advocated for myself at that moment, maybe not the way I should have the night before. And at that moment, I was ready to advocate for myself. There was no way I was going to leave that company without at least speaking my truth of what happened.
And I love the fact that last week you shared with us, I could have, now I get to. It's one of those things that in your family traditions and some of the things that you understood and you just knew so well, be careful what we tell our children because they will remember. Now I get to, and so you stood up and you just found that inner strength to bring to the table. Now let's talk about a lawsuit.
Yes, I have two.
Why don't you, yes, let's talk about the first one. And then I don't think we're going to get to the second one today.
Well, maybe we could just briefly talk about the first one and then
get to the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, so the first one was the litigation that had to happen for me to get divorced.
Yes.
So that litigation took 3 years and $300,000. And I really do feel that it is because the family court is the only court in all of the United States that does not have a jury. And so it gets dragged out and dragged on. I mean, especially it's usually very simple. Things are split. And I don't think any litigation in a family court should have to go on for more than that. And some people, they tell me it's 7 years. So 3 years, $300,000. And I talk about it in detail, not a lot of detail, but more detail in the book that I'd rather not talk about here. And I chose at that time all that I was going through and the difficulty it was. I chose to stay home, care for my children, care for myself. And my mind was not clear. I was in fight and flight mode. And I just felt it'd be best to push through the pain as opposed to numbing the pain.
Tell us about that, because that came up last week in the post conversation, and I really want to dig into that. How many people here, when pain comes and we're so distraught, and I mean, it's one thing to celebrate, right? You're going to have a cup of coffee, a cup of champagne, and you're going to celebrate.
Yeah. Yes.
But numbing the pain versus being present with all of your all that you've got to be able to face something that is negative. Tell us about that.
I think when I go back, as long as I can remember, I've always chosen to be still and to feel whatever it was I was going through, or even if I wasn't going through it, or maybe secondary from watching what was going on around me, parents or other family members, just watching and observing. And then times in my life, I would like to feel it and be still. And so, yes, like you said, to celebrate and have a glass of champagne or celebrate, and you're with people who are also celebrating with you.
Yes.
But when you're not in that clear state of mind, I feared making I was already in fight and flight mode. I was already fearful. So I thought if I could make a mistake, if I drank or I did, it just didn't make sense to me. And people were saying, oh, but don't you want something to just, take the edge off? And I said, no, I know the source of the pain and it'll pass. And I kept thinking it's going to pass, and when will it pass? And now I can laugh about it, but it was very, very painful. And so, you can look at me today and go, oh, sure, how bad could it have been? It was bad. 3 years of a litigation. And for the court to know that you were in a dangerous situation and not address it is very, very scary.
So just so everybody knows here, the kind of woman we have today here with us, we were talking about maybe even having some conversation around changing the laws of family court.
Yes.
Because you said something that's very key here. The family court is the only one that doesn't have a jury. So you don't have a peer group that's going to help you really understand or bring forth a different point of view. It's only you and the attorneys and the judge, and that's it. So this could, in essence, go forever.
And who then determines? So when there is abuse or harm, if someone's going to harm themselves or someone else, that's criminal law. So why is it if a child is harmed or an adult is harmed, male or female, why isn't it not handled in the same way? Why do they get to extend it out and someone's in danger? And I'm not just talking about myself. And I think that's why when that date came up and I saw it's Amnesty International, it's Human Rights Day. It's a day for human rights, and everyone gets to be treated fairly, equally, with humanity and valued. Very, very important.
Let's go back to your 20-year-old self.
Yes.
And if you had some lessons or some things that you wanted to tell your 20-year-old self, either to warn her or to, there's a lot of power. There was a time in my life when I was told, who's your little girl, and take care of your little girl, and write a letter to your little girl. And that was a very impactful time in my personal life. And there's so many things in your story that I can identify with. And so when we go back to talking to our little girls, very therapeutic, isn't it?
Yes.
And so if you were talking to your little girl today, what would you say? When I say your little girl, I don't mean little, tiny, tiny little girl. I mean your 20-year-old self, and the woman that was in Wall Street, the woman that was that went through a bad marriage. And with the marriage statistics in today's environment, there are a lot of people that are going to be able to identify with much of what is in your book. And I want people to just pick it up and read it, because there's so much there that so many people can identify, men and women. And so when you're going back as an adult, as a woman who even last week as a humble woman, as a grateful woman, as an aware woman, as a beautiful, graceful, intelligent, well put together woman who's now advocating and giving so much of yourself to women and to men to help men understand. What would you say to that woman, or to that, and I call it my little girl, but I don't mean it to be the little girl, but the woman who was abused in the different times in your life? What would you say to her?
I would say to her, you get to be heard. You get to speak in grace, calmly, quietly, and you will be heard. It's how we speak. And when our emotions are there, and I know this through through my mistakes, that when the emotion is there, you're best to just maybe stay quiet, calm yourself down, and go and write down even what you're going to say, so that you have your thoughts together, and that you can go into the president's office, or you can go and someone will listen to you. And not really, I always think of the outcome, which I was saying in a different interview, that I wasn't thinking of it. I do think about the outcome, and don't hold on to the outcome. Don't be so concerned with it. Think about what could happen if you don't speak. And when I say that is, don't have regrets. So look at it and go, well, as long as I speak my truth, if it doesn't work out, it's God's will. At least you won't have regrets. See, when you stand up for yourself and you advocate for yourself, it's going to turn out the way it's going to turn out. At least you know that you took a stand, you advocated for yourself.
Yes. You know, I love the fact that you're saying, and Gabrielle is saying, love that, keep the facts and don't get emotional. And absolutely, whenever I say, I'm going to take an academic look at this, all of a sudden, people, or I say, I'm going to take an objective look at the facts. Or I say, let's take a look at the facts here. Fact one, without emotion. Fact two, without emotion. Then all of a sudden you're able to hold the situation and observe it as it is, not as you would want it to be. And so it isn't that, I don't know that it's you withhold your emotion. I think you control your emotion.
Yes. And having, incredible people around you. And so in, the litigation, if we may go on, in the litigation, that you need someone to advocate for you in a courtroom. If you need a procedure, it's not something you're going to do, and you're going to need a doctor, you're going to need a surgeon. These things. So you go to someone else and you surround yourself with people and make sure they're the right people. And I didn't always have the right people. I mean, you're already in a situation where you're in duress. And I think that's where the family court, and I'm not saying that the judges, they don't know what's happening, that they are keeping you emotional. They're, these letters that go back and forth keep you emotional. Yeah. And I have a section that says, don't read the mail on Friday for that reason. And people screaming at you, and you just know, if like numbers don't lie, then you can sit there and you could say, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to work. I mean, yelling. Thankfully, I was already equipped for that. Yes. So they tried to shake me up, and you have to stand your ground and be calm and just say, no, it doesn't work.
In litigation, like in deposition, and I've had the opportunity to litigate and mediate 86 cases in a court of law. And one of the things that I learned in litigation, in mediation, and when I did crisis intervention counseling, the idea of staying calm, and the idea of having when you say your truth, because there is a truth, that those are the facts, and staying with the numbers, you said. And the numbers could be the truth. The idea of being so laser-like focused that you are only speaking truth, and people will try to move you in or sway or change something you said. One of the things that I used in one of the litigations was, Your Honor, that's not what I said. That's it. Your Honor, that's not the truth. This is the truth. So turning and facing maybe whoever is advocating for you, and that's in the one situation that I'm thinking about. I was at the witness stand, and the attorney was trying to sway me, and so turning to the judge and saying, Your Honor, that's not true. That's not what I said. In staying with the truth, but you mentioned something. Getting someone to surround you who is the right person, and I often say, borrow somebody else's brain. Can I borrow your brain for a moment? And I do that whenever I'm stressed, or if I can't think straight, I'll call someone who has that agility in that, or that genius in that area, and I'll say, can I borrow your brain for a moment? Can I just give you the situation? Can you help me think through this? Tell us about that.
Yes, I was blessed. People came into my life, and yes, I said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know the accounting. I don't know the the Excel. And they said, oh, it's pretty simple. Let me help you. And they put everything on my computer, and I went in, and every time they said something, and I go, no, it's not right. And they were screaming at me. And I said, you're not accounting for the IRS. I have to pay the IRS. No, you don't need to worry about that now. I said, well, who's going to worry about it? Will you write me a check? So they looked at me, and I said, no, you want to come look at my computer? I have to pay the government. Are you suggesting I do not pay my taxes? You know, little things like that. And I was afraid. I was in duress, and I was able to, because I had those facts in front of me, to just rely on that through a friend who did that for me. Yes. I borrowed their knowledge. Yes. They were happy to help me. People are happy to help you.
Yes.
Blessed with that.
And people are, and reaching out for help. So tell us about the women, because there are going to be some women and some men that are going to be watching this.
Yes.
And they're going to say, how in the world is she able to ask for help? Because I can't ask for help. Tell us about that.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you, because any interview, if I've ever had, if they said, what would you say is your weakness? I said, asking for help. And I get better each day. I get better each day. And so the greatest gift I ever had was a man who told me and he asked me what joy I get out of doing outreaches and this and that. And he said, Maria, you rob people of that if you don't allow them to help you, or you don't ask people who care to help you. They want to do it for you. And so it wasn't always easy, and each day I get better at asking for help. Yeah, from people who have the knowledge and just want to.
So tell us about what people are going to get from your book. Having written the book, having gone through your entire story, what are they going to get by picking up your book? And I can't wait to be supportive in getting this word out on Thursday.
Thank you. What they're going to get out of it is what is possible. What is possible? So all the seeds that have been planted in us, whether it's the exact words of you'll never, or it's you can't, you won't, it's not possible. This book shows you that through my journey, what was possible, and whatever their journey is, it's possible. It's getting your mindset, it's getting the right people around you, knowing that advocating, self-advocacy is so, so important. And how do we do that graciously so that we are heard, that we are valued, we know that we are enough.
And we know that we are enough. How do people get a hold of you, Maria?
They can just, Maria Mastrodicasa .com. They can go to my website. or they can go to goaskmaria@gmail.com. That is my email. And follow me here on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
And you have some times when you gather publicly with people on Facebook Live. Can you tell us about those? Because I want to make sure that people can find you at those times, because I've seen some of those and you're so gracious in giving away all of your wisdom.
Thank you. I jump in now and then, but on Wednesdays, I do a Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday. And then this Thursday will be my book launch. So I'm very excited about that. So I'll be doing that Thursday, and I'll be doing it 10 o'clock Pacific, and I will be doing it at 1 Eastern Standard Time. And then we're going to come back for a panel on self-advocacy for those who want to purchase the book, and send the receipt to my email, and we'll give them a link. So that they can private panel.
Yay! So Thursday's a big day, everybody. So Maria Mastrodicasa with her book, You'll Never. And so if you need to get a hold of her, go ask Maria@gmail.com. And Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time, this is the time when you can gather and you can get to know Maria at a deeper level. She talks about self-advocacy. She gathers a lot of different people that come in, and you talk about so many different topics each Wednesday, but it's always Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, Eastern time 1. And then Thursday is the day, ladies and gentlemen. So wait to get your book on Thursday. You're going to have some surprises for people on Thursday. Yes. And it begins at 10 a.m. Pacific on Thursday and 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then for the panel and for getting your book. Congratulations, Maria. Yes. Anything else before we leave?
I am just very, very grateful. I'm so excited. And yes, I hope that it's extremely impactful for men and women.
Absolutely. And I know that it will be. It's funny, from the moment I read the book, I just knew this is going to be something that has to get out into the open. Very few people will talk so deeply about the key lessons of being a woman, of being in a man's world, of growing up. You talk about from all the way from your childhood through your trials and how you overcame them, and the tools and lessons that you learned along the way, and in very practical tools. Each chapter has some very practical tools that that the reader can just actually take and pay forward. It's very simple, and you make it so easy for everyone. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We love you so much, and I can't wait.
I love you. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. If anybody has any questions on Facebook, please write them down. Maria will come right back, and she'll answer your questions. And then we will see you again on Thursday, the day. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.